Hello everyone, Ryx here again with another guide, this time to explain the Gunner class in New Genesis. Now, like Ranger, I am not too versed with the range classes, so it took me a little longer to figure out Gunner so that way I could explain it in detail and how it works and everything. As many of you may have seen in the Ranger guide, I may have left some stuff out or not explained it properly, and that's because this class in particular, the range ones, both Ranger and Gunner, are a little different than my melee focused classes, which I spend a majority of my time on. But if anyone has any better info or can explain things better, please leave it down in the comments below. It really helps out anyone who's looking into the guide for answers if they can find it at least in the comment section if I don't explain it in the video. So let's get right in this with the skills first and then subclasses right after. Alright, so here we have the main Gunner skill tree that we're going to be going over. Now, Gunner is a range class that really specializes in mid to close combat, unlike Ranger, which is long to mid combat abilities. So with Gunner, you're essentially going to be almost right on top of the boss if you can manage it, because that's where you excel at doing the most damage. Now, to start things off, you're going to want to pick up Chain Trigger immediately as your first ability. This is your bread and butter for this class. Without this being used, your class will do almost about 60 to 70% less damage all over. And then what you're going to want to pick up to support Chain Trigger is Chain Trigger Quick Reload and Chain Boost. Now, Chain Trigger Quick Reload makes it so that way the higher your combo is when you trigger Chain Trigger, it will actually put it more on a lower cooldown, letting you use it faster. I believe at 100 stacks, which is the maximum Chain Trigger can get, this Quick Reload makes it so that way you can almost immediately proc another Chain Trigger right on top of that. And then Chain Boost will make it so that way whenever you pop it at varying levels, you get more attack speed. Obviously, we're aiming for the max amount, which is 100, to give you the max amount of attack speed increase during combat. Now, Stylish Roll Art, Stylish Roll Strike Back, and Stylish Onslaught are all abilities that have to do with your weapon action. I did not use the weapon action very much during my time, or if I did, then I didn't quite notice it, but seeing as how it does help with the weapon action when it comes to dodging or performing an attack following your weapon action, I would recommend picking up all three of these. And the obvious two being the slow landing attack gunner and slow landing charge gunner for when you're fighting enemies in the air, or if you just want to stay in the air as your gunner for maximum mobility. Now, I wouldn't recommend picking up Spread Shot or Spread Shot Quick Getaway, as these two abilities only really affect the assault rifle, as you can see right here. And even though Gunner has access to the assault rifle, they do not have access to the Ranger's Blight rounds, which is the most important thing of assault rifles. So you're not really going to be using assault rifles too much. Maybe you want to use it for homing shot, which is a great add clear AoE ability, but besides that, wouldn't really recommend. Now, when it comes to attack PP recovery and overwhelm, I would highly suggest taking more points into attack PP recovery, as this affects just everything while attacking, and overwhelm only affects enemies that are not bosses. So you're going to want to take maybe 1 point in this, and then the rest all in here for your complete main class build. Now, let's get into the discussion of subclasses. As with all classes that really need a lot of PP while doing a lot of combos, a lot of damage, I highly recommend Force as my top pick when it comes to playing Gunner. Gunner uses so much PP during mid combo, and it's very hard to find a lot of opportunities to really make sure that you don't run out while the boss is in a down state, that PP conservation and then PP conservation increase really help just keep it so that way you're constantly able to dish out damage during a boss's down stage when it's at its most vulnerable. Now, PP recovery boost and eradication PP gain are very nice for just general recovery. PP recovery boost does stack really well with attack PP recovery, just able to keep you constantly filled up with just a couple of normal attacks. Eradication PP gain helping you extraordinary whenever you're in PSE Burst areas and fighting large mobs of enemies. Now, for the last ones, I'd recommend we have Fighter and Hunter. Fighter is good for just general damage increase against downed enemies, and then more PP recovery when an enemy is downed. This is a really good one if you want to do more damage and you're not too afraid of your PP recovery, because as Gunner you do have attack PP recovery, so Force might be an overkill if you know how to use your abilities properly, which is why I recommend Fighter as the more damage alternative to Force. And then finally, we have Hunter here. Hunter is a good alternative if you want to just take less damage. I wouldn't really recommend it myself, as I would prefer to either have more PP gain or just do more damage with Fighter. But if you want to be able to get in close and not worry about damage too much, you do have the ability to take Flash Guard, and Hunter Physique both will help you sustain yourself. Now, there are two subclasses here I do not recommend, and that is Ranger, as it only gives Bad Condition Ward and Bad Condition Reduction, which are not really too heavily needed, unless maybe you want them for if you use Giant armor, but even then, it's not really something I'd recommend. And Tekker only really functions as a subclass for Weak Element Amplifier and Awake Agile, which is not also needed at all. So I say that Ranger and Tekker are big no's when it comes to subclasses, and then Force, Fighter, and Hunter are going to be your ideal go-to picks. Now let's talk about weapons and armors that I recommend for this class. Alright, now we're going to go over the weapons that I'd say you should be using as the Gunner class. In my opinion, I'd say if you're able to consistently sidestep an attack every about 30 seconds or so, again, the Resurger series of machine guns, in my opinion, is going to be a consistent damage output. At potential 3, it has 21% potency and 15% crit rate for 30 seconds after a successful sidestep. This is a very easy thing to do, as with the Gunner class, you're going to be almost up close with your opponent, letting you be able to read their movements properly and easily be able to perform sidesteps to keep the crit rate at a high level. If you manage to get a Resurger weapon with Fixatermina on it, which gives you crit potency, it could be a very dangerous duo combined together. Now, the other one that I'm going to show you, and we're going to use our friendly neighborhood shop here, is actually going to be the Straga machine gun series, which, in my opinion, if you don't want to use the Resurger ones for the sake of it doing less potency and the necessity of having to sidestep to increase your overall damage, you can use these. The Straga series of weapons drops from the Gigantrixes, which makes it pretty easy to farm, or they're at a very low price right now because Gigantrix farming is at an all-time high. Now, they come with Berserker unit as a potential, which at level 3 gives you 26 potency, but it does give you minus 10 damage resistance. Now, this is a whole 5% more potency higher than the Resurger ones at 3, which does offset the necessity to actually have to sidestep, letting you entirely focus on your chain trigger combos and be able to read the enemy more thoroughly. Now, the next ones I'd recommend are obviously going to be the Catalea series, which is a good alternative to the Straga ones, but at the same time slightly weaker. Now, at level 1, it gives you 15 potency and an additional 5 potency when you're at max HP. Degrades as you lose HP. At level 2, it gives you 17%, and at level 3, it gives you 20%. So combined at level 3, it would give you 25, which is still 1% less than the Straga series. And with the Straga series, you don't have to be at full HP to get that damage increase. Now, finally, there's going to be the Glisten series. Now, the issue with the Glisten series, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about this, is that the extra potential for the Glisten series is that it unleashes an extra attack that inflicts element down. This extra attack actually has a issue where it will complete your chain trigger without you wanting it to on occasions, which leads to a very bugged out ability. Now, while these weapons are in the seasonal because they have the element of lightning, which is helpful against DCs, as well as the Gigantrixes, the veteran bosses, and the urgent quests right now, they're not really a necessity for your long-term plan. Now, if you're going long-term, I would highly suggest using the Straga series or the Resurgers, in my opinion, Straga being the more easy to use alternative. But when it comes to the Glisten, it gives at the various levels of potential, and the extra leashes does actually help with element down on an opponent, which would be really good for bossing. They happen to address the issue with twin machine guns, as they have been already. They already made an announcement that they are aware of the issue happening with them. If they address it before the next update or after the next update, then this weapon would actually be good for the last couple of weeks of the seasonal event. Now let's move on to the armor discussion. All right, so here we're going to have our armor discussion. Now, Qualdel armor is pretty good for the fact that it gives you 6 PP, but it does only have 8 starting defense. Very good for if you need a lot of PP, but still on the squishy side. Catalea, in my opinion, is probably going to be your best bet for just general use, as it gives you 12 defense, HP plus 20, and then PP plus 2. Just a good general use armor. I do not actually recommend the Vialto series of armor in any way for gunners, as all it does is give you defense. And with the gunner, you should be trying to build more offensive than defensive. And then finally, we're going to go and explain that the Qualdel armor Arga and the Qualdel armor Belta both have very good starting defenses, but the main sell point of these two is that they actually come with 1% range potency built in, so you don't have to build into it, which would be really helpful for if you're going to want to use these armors in combination with something else. And then finally, we have our big damage increaser, but also a significant kind of damaging. The Giant armor here starts off at 15 defense, but you lose 20 HP, but you also get 10 PP and plus 2 potency across the board. But you do make yourself 50% more susceptible to element affliction. But as long as you are careful with this, this doesn't really matter too much. On my main set, I actually use a full set of these because of the amount of damage that it's able to give you, as long as you play carefully and make sure time your parries. Now we're going to move on to the Photon arts for twin machine guns. Alright, so here we'll go over your Photon arts for the twin machine guns for Gunner. Now, to start things off, we have Bullet Rave. Now, Bullet Rave is, in my opinion, going to be your bread and butter ability to be able to build chain trigger stacks on an enemy. The best part about the ability is that when you charge it up, or just use it normally, there's multiple bullets out. This helps you build up multiple stacks of chain trigger, as you do need to hit 100 times to build the ability up to maximum. Now, the next one that we're going to go over is Aimless Rain. Aimless Rain is going to be your main AoE ability. This is the best ability to be using during a PSE Burst in one of the many areas, or just against a large grouping of enemies to quickly build up chain trigger stacks. Now, the best about this ability is that it just hits all around you with a final just big damaging attack. Now, every enemy that is around you will get hit by this ability, so if you have maybe about 5 to 10 enemies surrounding you, every time that the ability shoots out, it will build 5 to 10 hit stacks for chain trigger each hit. Now, the final one is Point Blank. Now, Point Blank is mostly, in my opinion, used for quick damage when a boss is down because of the fact that it only really hits twice. But each of those hits does a lot of damage, would let you quickly back up damage against a boss. As you can see, though, it does use a hefty amount of PP. This is where I recommend having Force as class, because you could pop PP conservation, get a lot of regen, and then while a boss is in a down state, be able to use your entire bar and then fill it back up in a map just 1 second or so, and then immediately go back at it, attacking with Point Blank. Now, let's go ahead and show you examples of both Fighting Veteran and PSE Burst areas, as this class excels at being able to both solo veterans and also operate in PSE Burst areas. Alrighty, so here we have actually Veteran right here. I'm just going to show you just quick and easy combat tricks when it comes to fighting them. Now, obviously, the first thing you want to do is just immediately start with building up Chain Trigger as much as possible. Your main goal is to focus on getting it to 100 before you pop it. Now, to pop Chain Trigger, what you need to do is actually charge your photon arts. It can be any of your photon arts, but it does need to be one you charge. See that I'm at 100 now, so I go to charge an ability, and as soon as it hits the opponent, it immediately procs Chain Trigger at full power. Now, I can see, thanks to quick reload, I can immediately charge another ability, hit again, and I'm already building up more stat trigger. This helps me continuously keep the flow of combat for my class while spamming the activation of Chain Trigger. You will also see that I am only using Bullet Rave to really attack here, and that's because Bullet Rave is rapid fire and able to build up many stacks of Chain Trigger at rapid rates while also dealing out a lot of damage. Also, if you want it to be on the move, maybe the opponent is repositioning, as you can see here, you can use your weapon action to continuously reposition yourself in the middle of combat. Now, when the boss is down, we go in for point blank, spamming it to lots of damage, getting in a charge one to activate our Chain Trigger. Now you see here that I do not actually have my 4 subclass equipped, so because of this, I didn't have the ability to use PP conservation when I ran out of PP there, so I had no attack. But all in all, there specializes in very easy boss killing when it comes to vet fights, with their ability to essentially dance around the boss without any worry of damage, and as you keep Chain Trigger up, it becomes a very simple procedure to be able to dish out a lot of damage to veteran targets, or even the urgent quest bosses, or even Gigantrixes without putting yourself in too much danger. Now, let's move on to the PSE Burst areas and discuss those. Alright, so here we find ourselves right in the middle of a PSE Burst, as you can see here. We're going to start this off by activating our Chain Trigger ability by immediately charging Aimless Rain, and then proceeding to essentially constantly spam the ability as it does the most AoE damage until we get to our 100 required Chain Trigger stacks, which when that happens, we're going to then charge it up and then pop our full 100 while trying to build back up our gauge before going back in with more Aimless Rain. Now, as you do have access to a rifle, you could also use this opportunity to spam your homing shots, which that as well does a good work here, and maybe more than Aimless Rain could, but at the same time, you suffer from not being able to build up your Chain Trigger stacks or really make use of your Chain Trigger damage because of the fact that you're using a rifle instead of machine guns. So, for the sake of PSE Burst areas, I highly recommend just sticking to your twin machine guns instead of trying to use homing shots. Now, for the most part, again, as you can see here, I've mostly just been using Aimless Rain, as Bullet Rave does a good job building it. In this case, where you're surrounded on all sides by enemies, Aimless Rain is actually going to be your complete bread and butter ability when it comes to just dealing out a lot of damage in an AoE. Alright everyone, that's going to be it for this video. I hope that I was informative enough with all the information that is necessary to understand how the class works. Again, if you have any additional information you'd like to add, please add it down in the comment section below, as people would love to hear about it if I didn't mention it. Now, I am still working on other guide videos. I still have to cover two more of them, and that's going to be the Force class and the Techer class. Those are a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to take a little longer with that. But also in the future, I'm working on a video for my thoughts on how the season event has been going now that we're about to get part 2 of it, and also going over the excitement and hype that's going to be surrounding the Braver class when it releases in August after this event cycle ends. So if you'd like to see those videos when they come out, please remember to subscribe to the channel so that way you get notified of when the videos go live. And if you like this video, please like it and then leave a comment down below. It really helps out and lets me know if I need to work on anything else or fix up anything in the video for your viewing enjoyment. Now, as always, take care, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!